Hi, it's Tripp Harrison from Twiford Funeral Homes in Manteo, North Carolina on the beautiful Outer Banks, continuing our series, When Someone Dies, where funeral directors and funeral professionals discuss important logistics involved in a death situation for those surviving. Today we want to talk about a subject that's not necessarily very pleasant, but it's something that's important to talk about. And that's what we refer to in our industry as an imminent death. An imminent death is typically a term that would describe someone who is understood to be a matter of hours to maybe a day or two away from expected passing. Sometimes in the last stages, the individuals are lucid and they can talk and they know what's happening, and in some cases they're not at all. But when it's certain that the individual has got a very short time left, we refer to that as an imminent case. It's a difficult time, and I want to give you some things that you can consider during that time, especially in the downtime in between. Because the best advice I can give you is the most important thing to do when your loved one is facing an imminent death is to spend time with them. And that time is as much for you as it is for them. Even if they can't necessarily understand, no one really knows in anyone's condition what they can or can't perceive. It's important for you to be there, not only so that you can support them if they can perceive it, but that so you can go live the rest of your life understanding and believing that you were there for them during this difficult time. And so that's the number one message. If you take nothing away from this video today, other than that, to spend as much time with them as you can. In some cases where an imminent death moves into a multi-day period, there is going to be some downtime. There may be other people that want to spend some time alone with the loved one. Perhaps they're sleeping or what have you, and we have a little time to do some other things. The questions we want to talk about today are what other things could be done or can be taken care of ahead of time to sort of lessen the stress at the actual time of death. The first thing a funeral director will need, unless the funeral has been pre-planned already, is some vital statistics. This is basically just name, address, the name of the physician that's caring for the individual, because they'll probably be the one asked to sign the death certificate, which is a critically important document later on. But the things you can think about and information you can gather if you have an opportunity during this imminent time is to get information like, of course, the full name of the deceased or soon to be deceased, but their social security number, their place of birth, their parents' name, and mother's maiden name. Now, those seem like ordinary questions for us who are not expected to pass away anytime soon, but sometimes when we're dealing with people who are very elderly, I've dealt with many families where the imminent case, the imminent deceased is in their 90s, and asking surviving children or grandchildren the maiden name of the soon-to-be deceased mother creates quite the Easter egg hunt trying to get that information, because a lot of that hasn't been relevant to anything in a long time. So that might be the time to try to acquire that information by going through some of their paperwork or belongings, or if they're lucid, you might even want to ask them for that information. The name of their parents, place of birth. If they're a military veteran, there's a form that is going to be required most of the time, and there are some ways to circumvent it for some things, but there is a form called a DD-214, and it is basically a certificate proof of service in the military, and that will be a document if there's any military honors to be part of the service. The DD-214 will need to be found. If we can't find that document, you can get one through the VA office, or sometimes the service number and the dates of service can be adequate. It just depends on your area and how flexible your local Veterans Affairs office is with things like that. The other things that you want to think about during this period may be the wishes of the person who's passing away. Might be if they're lucid and if it's a topic that you feel is comfortable to discuss with them. In some cases, of course, it's not something they want to think about, but surprisingly, large number of people are more than willing to let you know how they want their arrangements to be, whether they want to be buried or cremated or what have you. So you'll have to decide for yourself, sort of feel it out based on the individual and your relationship with them as to whether or not that's an appropriate conversation. But it certainly is an option. It's a good time during this imminent period to notify family members, particularly those who are far away, because if they want to travel for services or for a memorial, and it's in most cases it's too late to come from far away to see them while they're still alive. Sometimes it happens, but more often than not, it's basically planning travel arrangements. And although the individual is not passed away yet, if it's truly an imminent case and it's a matter of hours, giving someone a little bit of a head start on travel arrangements, is particularly if they're flying in from another state, can be very important. Many airlines offer bereavement rates where an individual can get a heavily discounted airfare if they're coming for the memorial service or a funeral service of a loved one. I can't speak to any airlines specifically, but it's worth asking when you're making those travel arrangements. So I think that's important. A couple of other quick things to think about is notifying those closest to you that you need to make a decision about clothing. If the individual is going to be embalmed and put into a casket and there's a visitation and a funeral and whatnot, the clothes are very important, a decision to make, and it's important to get consensus and family members that people can generally agree what the person should wear. And that can be discussed, I think, fairly easily ahead of time if you have that opportunity. The other thing that would be important is to touch base with the funeral home that you've selected. If you haven't decided on a funeral home yet, this is a little bit of time that you can use to do some research. And we've covered that in two of our previous videos. So you might want to review those if you're in this situation to give yourself a little guidance on picking a funeral home that's right for you and for your family and that has enough experience and commitment to see the services through from the very beginning to the very end. So those are some important things. And the final thought is that once your loved one passes and you've done as much of this as you could, you will be making an appointment after the death of your loved one to come in and meet with a funeral director and formalize those arrangements and begin to make specific plans for days and time, which you couldn't do before because you didn't know specifically when the passing would be. It's also time to think about money. At the arrangement conference, typically the funeral homes will ask you to make arrangements for the payment of the service, either to pay, sometimes people pay with cash or check, sometimes they pay with a credit card. There are times when life insurance can be assigned at that point, and the funeral home will do the necessary filing in most cases for life insurance and get that handled, and then whatever is not used for the service would be given back to the next of kin. So those are all questions you can ask the funeral director, and especially if you get a chance to select a funeral home and call them ahead of time and say, my loved one has been determined to be an imminent death. Could be an hour or two, could be a day or two, might be a week or two, but we expect this to happen, and we'd like to get a start on some of these arrangements so we're not dealing with all of that at once. And we have people out of town that would like to try to plan to be here for services and whatnot. So it's just something to think about, but remember the first thing I told you was the most important thing to do is to spend some time, whether they're lucid or not, spend some time with your loved one, because you'll never get a chance to do that again. And it's a very important thing that takes precedent over any of these logistical issues. But there will be time in between, and that's when these should be looked at. So If you have any questions, please leave them in the comment section below. I do ask that everyone who's gleaning some information from these videos, please like and subscribe to our channel. So like the video, subscribe to the channel, and you'll get updated. If you click on the bell, you'll get updated when we have a new video, which is fairly frequently. So again, feel free to reach out. Twiford Funeral Homes serves Eastern North Carolina from Elizabeth City down to the Outer Banks, and we offer our services to people who live in our area, but our advice and our opinions we offer to anyone who is facing this sort of a situation. So thanks again for being with me. I'm Tripp Harrison, Twiford Funeral Homes, Manteo, North Carolina. Thanks for being with us. We'll see you soon.